Hello there and welcome to the Below the 38th podcast. You may notice that we are sans one person today as he has been totally blasted out of football temporarily by things we'll get onto a little bit later. We are, of course, as I just mentioned, Below the 38th. You can check all of our stuff about the K-League on our website, on our Instagram. In fact, check out your favourite podcast provider because you'll also find us on there. But if you're interested in K-League, check out our website because there's plenty of stadium guides, there's interviews, there's previews, there's even something about the Korea Cup. So I'm not alone, of course. I am with the erstwhile Mr. Evans. How are you this evening, sir?
Yeah, not bad. It's been a busy weekend of football. I've not got much of a voice left, but powering through.
Indeed. So as always, on the weekend that was, we're going to be kicking off with all of the intrigues of the K-League 1. And of course, we'll move on to the far more important K-League 2 once we reach there. But let's start at the top, at least, of the league pyramid. So Luke, what's it been like this week?
So we start with Saturday's fixtures, and it was Gimcheon 1, Bucheon 1. Gimcheon took the lead in the 30th minute, and then Bucheon equalised through Baek Dong-gyu about 2 or 3 minutes later, and that's how it stayed. Not much else happened in the game. Bucheon were under the cosh for most of the game, but Gimcheon couldn't take their chances. It's a point each. It's a point that is probably better for Bucheon than it is for Gimcheon, but as we've said before several times on the podcast, it doesn't really matter for Gimcheon anyway. Coming on to Gwangju versus Pohang, Gwangju's transfer ban is now lifted and they are able to sign players, they're able to register players. They had 2 debuts in their lineup against Pohang at the weekend, and one of them notably was John Iredale, who signed from Eland in K2. It didn't make much of a difference. Ultimately, Pohang took their chances and they ran out comfortable winners. It was 3-0 in the end with Kento, Jacob Trzynska, and it was Cho Sang-hyuk with the goals for the Steelers. The game that probably got everybody's attention in the build-up was Ulsan versus Jeonbuk. It was the Hyundai Derby, and just over 20,000 people were in Ulsan Munsu Stadium to watch this one. Kim Jin-gyu, fresh off his World Cup antics, got the opener for Jeonbuk, scoring against Korean national team goalkeeper Jo Hyun-woo. Lee Seung-woo got a second goal in 2 games to double the lead for Jeonbuk, and then teenager Kim Ye-gon scored a wonder goal to round off the victory. The main talking point was a controversial build-up. Come on to that later and we'll have a discussion about that because it's caused a lot of controversy over here, so I think it's worth taking time to talk about it. Okay, now moving on to Sunday, Seoul versus Gangnam, another top of the table clash. It was first versus fourth at the time of kickoff, and 17,000 were in Seoul World Cup Stadium. And it was very hot and very humid, and that's kind of reflected in the game. 0-0, not many chances, 7 shots on target in total for both teams, and not really much else to report. It was very slow, possession heavy, and it looked like it was more a case of keeping the ball and avoiding losing than actually going for a win. Both teams seem happy to settle for a point. It's a point that extends Seoul's lead at the top, and it's a point that does wonders for Gangwon, as I'll come to in a moment. Now, just across from Seoul, we were in Incheon for a local derby of sorts between Incheon and Anyang. Before the game, we talked about how it was Anyang's first visit to Incheon in the league, and an early goal by Kwang Kyung-won settled it. It was a 4th-minute goal from a corner routine. The Incheon manager was not happy to be conceding from set pieces. After Anyang scored, Incheon controlled the majority of the ball for the rest of the game. Anyang had a few chances and they had a few decent shots on goal, testing Kim Dong-un in the Incheon goal. Incheon had their own chances, but it was a lot of comfortable saves, near misses and blocked crosses for the most part. Not the best game of football, but definitely a better result for Anyang, and one that leaves Incheon as the only team in K-League 1 to have lost both of their games after the restart. Following the game, I talked to Morgan Ferrier about the result and about the summer fixtures. You can check out that now on our YouTube channel. Our final game of the weekend in K-League 1 was Jeju versus Daejeon. If you thought Seoul versus Gangwon was bad, this one was worse. There was one shot on target. It was 35 degrees. It was very, very hot. Daejeon's front three have a combined age of 95 years at kickoff, and that's not really an age you want to be playing in this weather. So yeah, not really very much to write home about. Nothing really happened, but Daejeon looked to be in serious trouble. They've not won for a while. They're not really creating chances, and they're definitely struggling to score goals. They've got a few big games coming up. It'll be interesting to see how they do. So looking at the table, Jeonbuk's win over Ulsan moves them into second. They're now 7 points behind leader Seoul. Gangwon's point moves them up to third, ahead of Pohang, who are in fourth. Ulsan are the biggest movers of the week, but they've moved down into fifth. Anyang's win jumps them over Incheon into sixth, and Incheon dropped to seventh. At the bottom, it's as you were, with Jeju in eighth, Bucheon, Daejeon, Gimcheon, and then finally Gwangju at the bottom. However, given Gwangju's defeat, the gap is now back to 8 points between Gimcheon and Gwangju. So we've passed the halfway mark of the season in K-League 1. That's the latest round of games. It's hit the middle of the season as we go before the split. I think the top 9, except for Ulsan, won't be too unhappy with their positions in the league and how it stands. Daejeon's situation definitely isn't acceptable based on the money that they've spent and the players that they have. Ulsan definitely not going to be happy sitting 5th in the league. Everybody else, I think, are doing pretty well. Gwangju, it's not great, but I don't think anybody expected any difference given their situation off the field. And finally, Gimcheon probably just don't care. So yeah, that's K-League 1. Mike.
So of course the K-League 1 is of great interest to the teams in the playoff race, of course, in the K2, because if Gwangju do get out of it and Gimcheon of course finish bottom, it, as far as I understand, eliminates the playoffs from the K-League 2, which could be devastating. I mean, certain big teams could be sat in third place, and on the last day of the season Gimcheon can go down, lose, and that knocks them out the playoffs. So there's a little bit of intrigue even at the K2 level there, because of course we do know that K-League 1's problem is about to be dumped onto the K-League 2 from next season. Anyway, of course we'll have much more to say about that towards the end of the season, but we will move on to, of course, the big number 2. That, of course, is the second tier in Korea. I think the second tier has probably improved a lot over the past few years, from a league that struggled to be of interest to one especially this season. There's a lot of interest, and of course having bigger teams in, and teams like Incheon last season winning the K2, Anyang's story, Bucheon's story. There's a lot coming out of it. That it's not just a yo-yo division anymore for the traditional big teams. But where do we start then after this weekend? Because in the preview show last week, we said it looked like a fairly straightforward weekend for most of the top sides. Most of the teams were playing teams at the bottom, if they're from the top. But we're actually given quite a few surprises. So let's just focus on the playoff race to begin with, because it looks like we now have a clear top 5 in the K-League 2. Only 7 points are separating 5th position from the top, and there's only 3 points between 2nd and 5th. Meanwhile, it looks like 3 sides are set to battle it out for the playoff spot without relegation anymore into the K-League 3 this season, with that now being scrapped. Then it does mean that we've lost a bit of intrigue at the bottom, so it's all at the top. So let's just see what happened, because league leaders Busan, they comfortably survived what I thought would be a much bigger test from Gimpo. We said this might be the big game of the weekend, the one to watch, but the Seaside has delivered, with Kim Min-hyuk and Renato adding their 4th and 6th goals of the campaigns respectively. So this has dropped Gimpo out of the top 5 ruck, I think, now. And Hwasong, they suffered a similar fate as well, as they were beaten at home 2-1 by the frontiersmen of Paju. With Broya Baston, he grabbed his 6th of the season. And also Asan have failed to deliver on their recent good results, because they got that huge win at Gimpo last week, because they were held 1-1 at home to Gyeongnam. So I think we've got a really clear defined set of a playoff push versus actually the two teams, the teams pushing for the top 2 spots. Now, there were, of course, some massive results at the top of the table, but before we unpack that, there's a few marquee ones lower down. So, of course, Yongin, they've played out a 1-1 draw with Cheongju. Surprise, surprise. That's Cheongju's 11th draw in 16 games. I'm sure they're going for some sort of global record there, so look out for that. But their actual goal scorer, Garcia, he's joined second in the scoring chart with his 8th of the season. Almost half of all Cheongju's tally this season. It's likely you'll hear from him again at a team higher in the K2 next season, or perhaps even the K1. I'm sure he'll get his chance. But the big one is bottom side, Gimhae. They stunned Cheonan on their home turf with an early goal from, and I can't say it, Kikaltansei. It's got George Kinkladze vibes, but that's only Gimhae's second win of the season, and both have come away. They've still never won at home in the K-League 2, so look out for that one. And it actually has big implications for the playoff race, because that's put Cheonan 6 points off the last playoff position in 10th. Gyeongnam are in 9th. They're 5 points off on 20 points. It might be too early to call this, but I'm going to say they're probably, in the long run, out of that. I don't see them making the playoffs, but any team can put in a run. But let's get involved in that top 5, and let's start with Seoul Eland, because they're 5th on 29 points, but they did have a week off, so that's their excuse for dropping somewhat, because this allowed Suwon FC to pip them to 4th on goal difference as they absolutely demolished the Jeonnam Dragons 5-0, and they had 4 different goal scorers, including a brace from a Farizzo, meaning they've moved just a goal behind Daegu and Busan in the scoring charts. Can't emphasize how important this might be at the end of the season, because in the K-League it's goal scored, not goal difference. Of course, Friso is lead scorer in the league on 9 goals, so Suwon are absolutely firing, as are another team, Daegu, as well. They are firing as well. They're into 3rd, but they did survive a determined performance from the Magpies of Songnam. They twice had to come from behind before winning it in the 90th minute thanks to substitute Rice's goal. After, of course, Arone had been sent off earlier for Songnam. So a lucky escape there for Daegu, but they're now joint top scorers in the league with that. Though they may feel, of course, that they've rode their luck a little bit by 13th place Magpies. Busan, of course, as mentioned earlier, their lead is now 4 points at the top with that Gimpo win. Nobody expected them. Nobody's expecting them to keep this up, yet they keep doing it, and they're digging wins out. A little bit like maybe FC Seoul have done a lot this season. They've won different types of games, and that's champions form. But the thing with Busan this weekend is they were supposed to go into this game in 2nd place. Yes, a lot of confidence, a lot of ease, a lot of let's go and collect our 3 points as went from the Suwon Blue Wings as they rocked up to the Hwa Stadium. They had the little sing-songs, etc. And of course, Kang Song-jin, he pounced on it was a poor error from Ansan, started the second choice keeper, Kim Dodam. Some good songs on that name, I'm sure, but he made a really poor error in the first half. I think the ball was going to bounce out, and he just dived and slapped it. It took the Ansan defence completely by surprise, because obviously they were playing a resolute defensive game, but bang, 1-0 up, and I thought that pretty much game over now. I thought we were done, but things were going to take a turn in the wrong direction, of course. There were almost 10,000 in attendance at the Hwa Stadium on Saturday. Of course, the majority were, of course, the Blue Wings fans, but it's 2 weeks in a row where the attendance has been north of 5,000 at the Hwa Stadium. So that's always good to see. But we've talked about the importance of goals scored, and the Blue Wings have only scored 22 goals this season. You have to go all the way down in 8th to find the next team which has scored less than that. So the profligacy would come back to haunt them here at the Hwa Stadium. A defensive error was pounced upon by Gabriel Lima. Blue Wings were just dominating, a little bit of a hubris, I think, but Lima, he got his 5th of the season when he snuck in, made the most of the error there, and of course fired in an equaliser. Again, I just presumed that the Blue Wings winner was inevitable. They brought on the big man Ilyachenko to sort us out. And they just dominated the game. But of course, Kim Do-dam he redeemed his earlier error with some absolutely fine saves. Ansan faced 23 shots, with 7 being direct at the goal. Of course, by this stage, Ansan had only actually had 2 shots, I think, on target the entire game, and then, just this is like winning a cup. I can't get over how absolutely awesome this was. But Luke, you might remember this guy because he's from Incheon pastures a long time ago, and he's recently signed for Pohang for Ansan. Looking to end his career in his hometown. Yes, it's Kim In-sung, and he came on for his debut in the second half. But he's not here for a simple retirement. He's here to sort teams out. In the 83rd minute, he picked up a pass from Kim Jong-hyun, and he just took a look. No challenges, drove towards the box, and absolutely lashed in a goal into Kim Jun-hong's goal into the top left and smashed Andrew clean off this podcast, as you can see. Absolutely unbelievable, unexpected win for the Greeners. It's the first ever win over the Suwon Blue Wings. It's the first time I've ever seen the Blue Wings lose, actually. So obviously absolute party time in the home end. And that leaves the Blue Wings 4 points off the top, and they're now within 3 points of teams that have all got a superior goal scoring record. So basically, if they lose and any of those teams win, they will go above the Blue Wings. Simple. So to summarise that, Busan, they sit top, 36 points. The Blue Wings are second on 32. Daegu, third, 31. Suwon and Eland are both fourth and fifth respectively, both on 29 points. Hwasong sits 6 on 25, so I think they're kind of falling adrift of that race now. And Asan and Gimpo sit a simple point behind Hwasong on 24. It really is a heck of a race in the K2, and it seems to get better every weekend. But of course, for me, the season's very much done now. I think Ansan have won what we came to do, and we finally got that Blue Wing trophy. So we'll come on to, I think, talking a little bit more about the experiences over the weekend in a little bit. But as Luke spoke directly about earlier, there was a controversy in one of the big games in the K-League 1, of course. So should we dive into that?
Yeah, I thought this would be something good to talk about because it has caused a lot of controversy, and I've seen lots of clips of it shared by different social media accounts, shared by different Twitter accounts. In the Ulsan Jeonbuk game with the scores 0-0, Ulsan midfielder Bojanic went to try and get on the end of a cutback. At the same time, a Jeonbuk midfielder, I think it was Obadan, was coming to clear the ball out, and as the referee has seen Obadan coming, the referee's moved out of the way, straight into the path of Bojanic, and they have collided, and he's completely taken him out, the referee, and as the rules state, the referee has just played on. Now that's fine, but the problem is 20 seconds later, Jeonbuk had the ball in the back of the net. Now, it went from one end of the field to the other. It went from the edge of the Jeonbuk penalty area up to in front of the Ulsan goal. So you have to question why there weren't more people trying to get back, because the Jeonbuk players kept up with play, the Ulsan midfielders didn't get back in time. But it's definitely a big talking point, particularly because a few years ago the same thing happened and the game was stopped for a drop ball. So yeah, Mike, you've seen the video. First of all, what are your thoughts?
I think when you first see it, I think what makes this one maybe quite so much of a talking point is it's not simple coming together. I think that, as you said, the way the referee's stepping back, it looks like he actually takes the player out. It looks like it's quite forceful, the contact, it really is. But, I mean, it seems more of an unfortunate accident to me. And you talk about it led to a goal, but Jeonbuk had a lot of work to do to score. And there's there's major questions on the Ulsan defence. I'm not sure how, obviously it's a breakaway, but I'm not convinced how much advantage Jeonbuk really had from that, to be honest. I think they were moving the ball forward anyway. Looking at it, if you watch the video, I can see why you'd be really angry as an Ulsan fan. I can understand that completely. But is the referee, is it not just an on-pitch obstacle? Thinking like beach balls and goals and stuff from the past. But to be honest, I'm not actually. I can see what, if you watch the video, you can see why an Ulsan fan might be fuming at what's happened. But
Yeah.
I'm not 100% on this, the rule, how it works. Can you shed a bit more light?
Well, I mean, when I first saw it, I assumed play on was the right decision because if the referee collides with anybody, ultimately you do just play on. I spoke to my refereeing friend about it for clarification, and he said absolutely the referee is just somebody on the pitch, and if he collides or if somebody collides with him, unless he touches the ball, the game doesn't stop. If the referee touches the ball or the ball hits the referee, we have to stop the game now. But if you run into the referee or the referee moves and you don't go around him, then it is play on. I think the controversy all stems from the fact that in previous games when this has happened, the game has been stopped. But that might just be a case of the referee has been told that's not the rule, you have to play on, but also try to keep out of the player's way. I mean, he was right in the middle of the action. I know he doesn't know where the ball's going to go, but he's standing on the edge of the box when Ulsan are attacking and coming into the box. It wasn't very good positioning from him. But it's, again, I think it's one of those where if you benefit from it, then you're like, yeah, that's the rule, we play on. And if you're at the end of it, the other end of it, and you concede a goal 20 seconds later, you would be unhappy. And I imagine the manager's particularly going to be unhappy that that's happened. And yeah, it's not a great look where players are colliding with referees because referees get in the way, but there are rules, and it does seem as though the rules were followed in this situation. So yeah, interesting.
And of course, if the decision,
Mm.
if that decision was different in the past, then don't referees have a responsibility to talk about what should be, if they've not enforced a rule properly, and therefore it will be different if they fix it. You could see that as a positive move from the referees, because they get a lot of flack in this league, of course.
Yeah, I think that there should be some communication perhaps, and either explain why the game wasn't stopped or why the game was stopped previously. I think it was actually the same referee in the situation previously as well, which doesn't help matters because you've got previous form. But yeah, hopefully we'll hear a bit more clarification on that. But yeah, so I've included a video in this pod so that you can actually see what we're talking about rather than trying to imagine the referee playing the part of Big Dan Byrne. Okay, now, away from that, it was a busy weekend of football. Mike, you go first.
Sure.
Which games did you watch and how were they?
My games were, I had Sunday off, but Friday and Saturday were somewhat busy, so I think we'll move sequentially, I guess. So I started Friday with the WK League up in Seoul Sangam Auxiliary. There's a video on the Insta and it'll go to YouTube eventually. Just if you've never been there, it's quite a cool little stadium to check out and watch a game at, actually. But yeah, Seoul, they went down to 10 players fairly early, and then Suwon FC just demolished them 3-0. Actually leaves Suwon FC 8 points clear in the WK League. Although second place Hwachang do have 2 games in hand, so they could potentially reel them in a little bit. But Suwon have scored 40 goals in 15 games, so if you do want to see goals in the WK League, go and watch Suwon WFC this season. It looks like they are firing their way to a third WK title. Then over to Saturday, I actually had a little bit of a double header because just 3 stops on the Wa Stadium at Shingaluncheon Station. Again, we got a video on YouTube about the stadium there. That is of course Shihung, and they took on Busan Transportation, who managed to beat Shihung at Jeongwang Stadium for the second season in a row, meaning that second place Pocheon have cut Shihung's mighty lead at the top of the K3 to just 5 points. Now of course no one's going up from the K3 this season unless they're willing to pay for it, so there's a bit of magic lost from this race, to be honest, which is disappointing. Pocheon, however, only managed a draw 1-1 at Dangjin, but they did much of it with just 10 men. And of course, I've mentioned the Wa, and I've not recovered from that. It was a real party in the stands afterwards. It was good fun. The players were interacting and high-fiving. Shirts were thrown into the crowd. It was a big celebration. And I think if Blue Wings fans are listening to this, they shouldn't see that as an insult. They should see it as a compliment to how big a win that has been for us, frankly speaking. And the Blue Wings fans were actually good sports behind me. I got gifted a scarf from Suwon fans, so I'll treasure that. A lovely one as well, actually. and also post game around the stadium and etc. near Gojan Station. They were good spots, a good laugh, and I do feel like it really is time that they head on up to the K1 because it's very asymmetrical the fan base to most of the K2, frankly speaking. But yeah, that concluded my Saturday. So I think we got videos on Sangam Auxiliary, Zhongwang, and many. We've not just got stadium guides, we've got video tour guides, there's photo tour guides to many stadiums now across our media. So do check that out if you're planning new stadiums. And of course, there'll be a nice Wa Stadium talking about the proximity of a good coffee shop going up soon. Not letting that one go, Luke. Anyway, so that moves us on to Sunday, where, of course, you were busy.
I was busy. Just for the record, I don't even drink coffee, so I don't know. But yeah, Sunday, I having stayed up all night to watch World Cup, I managed to get myself to Incheon to take in Anyang versus Incheon United. It was the second game back after the summer break, and unfortunately Incheon lost. We've talked about it. It was an early goal, quite disappointing. The conditions during the game, it was hot and humid and sticky in your typical Korean summer night. The players all collapsed at the end of the game as the final whistle hit, and I think most of the people in the stand were happy that the game was over. Incheon huffed and puffed a lot. There were lots of crosses going in, but the crosses were pretty aimless. They hit the first man. They hit the goalkeeper quite easily. They went into the stand. They did anything except find Incheon players. When Incheon did have shots, they weren't ones that actually forced the keeper to make anything like a save. We did hit the crossbar, but that was pretty much as close as we got. Yeah, just one of those days. It's been one of those days for the last two games. I think I'm hoping that we can turn it around. Although it's Jeonbuk in town next weekend, so we'll see. It's a bit tough at the minute, but I think again I look that it's Incheon's first year back in K-League 1. I'm not expecting miracles. I think a lot of talk of AFC Champions League places has been kind of a bit premature, and finishing anywhere in the middle of the league is a good first season back. But yeah, so 10,600 thereabouts people in Incheon Stadium at the weekend. There were a good 1,500, maybe 2,000 Anyang fans. I'd like to see the full number. They were loud. The entire game they were singing. They had their little purple glow sticks. They're a credit to the league. It's good to have them in the league. And yeah, they definitely look like they belong. They're a battling team and they grind out results. So all credit to them. As we've said, there's interviews from after the game with Morgan Ferrier. That's gone up this evening onto YouTube and onto Instagram. So check out what he has to say. He's quickly becoming the fourth man of this podcast.
Maybe I'll get him on if one of us is absent. Or just replace one of us. If you got a comment on that, feel free to put that in.
Well, Andrew's gone. Andrew's disappeared. We'll get Morgs on next week.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's ever coming back. He's somewhere. He's been chased off by a couple of wolves called Rooney and Danny. So, yeah, actually, you mentioned Anyang. I remember being at the very first game in the K-League Challenge back in 2013, and they've grown a lot. They're one of the success stories about growing a club and developing it in Korea because, again, they didn't have a big attendance. They were pretty much pound for pound with most clubs when they started. I know they have that history and they had that hardcore base to start with, but they've done so much to build that fan base and make it, as you said, a credit to the K-League 1. So it'd be almost a shame to see them come back down to the K-League 2 based on that.
I don't imagine they will, not anytime soon.
So, yeah, there's something to mention as well, actually. Midweek, because we've no time to preview this one, there is Korea Cup second round, and this is when a lot of the teams that have battled through from the lower divisions will end up going up against a K-League 2 side. So, just to go through some of the fixtures I picked out, the aforementioned Shihung, they're going to travel to Daegu for the first time. That'll be a lovely trip. We're not on a Wednesday evening. You really need to fix that, I think. And Busan Transport, they're going to play Suwon Blue Wings. Blue Wings really need a pick-me-up, but Suwon Transport, they're fourth in the K3. They're not mugs. So we'll see about that. And the winner will get to play Ansan Greeners if they can get past the K4 leaders, Jinju Citizen. And they've only lost once this season. And I've seen Ansan losing to a K4 team in the cup before, so... and again, it's a Wednesday night, it's going to be hot. It's almost like you'd rather lose in normal time than go and win on penalties. It's that I'm covered in mosquito bites from the weekend. It's tough. But yeah, if you want a full summary of the round and see the brackets, that's also up on our website, so check that out. The Korea Cup brackets are predetermined at the beginning of the cup, so you can chart the progress of your team. So that's always interesting. Maybe, especially for lower league teams, you can see what prize you're going for. And of course, the big clubs can decide where they're going to, I guess, rest their players. So.
And that's it for Below the 38th, the weekend it was for this weekend. If you've got anything to say, please get in touch. Please leave a comment, subscribe, follow, share, all of that stuff. We're at Below the 38th on Instagram and Twitter. We're on YouTube, and we have our website, belowthe38thkorea.com as well. Thank you for watching. We will see you soon for a K-League preview.